It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
Good moment.
Good moment, Mr. Bain.
Mr. Bain. It's Barnett Bain here. And glad to be here.
Totally here. Totally present.
Totally present. Totally present. God, it's gorgeous today. You know, there's this strange atmospheric thing that happens in Southern California. There's a quiet that happens. There's this preternatural quiet that happens, a stillness that happens from time to time. And sometimes it's associated with kind of, or I associate it with, I call it fire weather or earthquake weather or natural, like biblical proportion kind of event weather. So we're in that kind of weather. That's sort of
well, we barely have weather, so when we have any sort of adjustment, we're like, this is weird.
Weird stillness.
Yeah.
Weird still.
Yeah.
We have odd weather here. We have, of course, our Santa Ana wind conditions.
No, those are weird.
Very similar to Mistrals and stuff in other countries, and Scirocco's. They're called. They have these winds in different places that blow in from the wrong direction all of a sudden and stir up mayhem and chaos. So
I like it as an analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with the metaphor of that.
Go swing with it.
Well, I don't know. I'm making it up. So what I'm taking from this is something that. So we all have a rhythm in our lives that we're comfortable with, and as long as everything is following the script, as it were, because we might be talking about scripts today.
Could be.
I don't know. We'll see. Then everything's okay. But then when something happens that throws everything off a little bit, there's two ways to look at it. One is that that's a problem, and the other is that it sort of wakes us up, and we start to become more aware. And that's an interesting way of going, wow, something just occurred that changes my routine, my patterned way of responding. And that's a good thing. At least it's a good thing if you're an artist, because it stirs up all kinds of juices.
That's cool. That is actually cool. So that's a great analogy. I like that a lot.
Thank you. The Santa Anas of my life.
The Santa Anas.
They're blowing.
So
they've been blowing.
You run your life a particular way, and nothing changes in terms of your schedule, in terms of your obligations and your accountabilities, but somehow something very subtle gets adjusted underneath.
Something in the air.
Something in the air, and it all seems different. And if you flow with it, then maybe magic happens. And if you resist it, it can become very difficult. Very difficult.
Well, let's flow into a conversation about acting, art, creativity, all that good stuff.
What a good idea. We have a very different kind of guest today. We're going to talk about things near to your heart, Freeman, and to mine as well.
Yeah, very much so.
We have Anthony Meindl, who is an award-winning writer, a producer, a director, an actor. He's with us today because he is also a metaphysician. He is also deeply intuitive.
And he's written this
teacher.
Incredible book.
He's written, let's see that book.
At Left Brain, Turn Right.
Really? No kidding. That's really interesting. But that's not what we're going to talk about today.
Well, we might. I don't know.
Because I think you wrote that quite some time ago.
That's all right. It's still good.
It is still good. It's really, it's really good. But he's here mostly because he's an acting teacher, and his orientation in terms of developing people's skills and unpacking their innate abilities to perform in the flow comes through spirituality, through consciousness, and through imparting to the people that he works with a deeper connection with who they really are Do I have that even remotely right? Even remotely right, Anthony?
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was pretty good, right?
Production. Yes.
So there's something in the air, Anthony.
I feel that.
Yeah, well, even that language, I feel it, is for many of us not the side of the brain we've been working with. We've been working on the I think it, and so to be in touch with a whole felt experience, and to source something from somewhere, and have that creative experience is a different way of operating, and that is your orientation. You are the creativity guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you just said, like, struck a chord in one of the foundations of what I think my work is really, obviously it's geared toward artists, but it's for everybody. And, the idea of stop thinking your way through life and start feeling your way instead. And I think that all beings on the planet, we're in need of sort of feeling therapy. Like, we have to be taught how to feel. Like, we're not very conscious of feeling. And, to me, it's like feeling is sort of the currency of spirit. And just trying to get people a little bit more aware of what they're feeling in the moment and how to express it and how to be brave with it and healing with it. It's science and it's spirit and it's consciousness. So that's really kind of what I'm known for, yeah.
Well, people have a tendency to either deny their feelings altogether,
yeah,
or to become over-identified with them.
With feeling, yeah.
With feeling, just they never, so particularly, I mean, I'm sometimes in the actor world, and occasionally, and there's a tendency among actors, not so much when they are in playing roles, but when they are doing life.
Oh, the life dramas.
There's a tendency to become so dramatic, and they just, feel the emotions, but never let them go. Never, God forbid, you should ever let an emotion go. But I know you have some advice for those of us who are
doing our little dramas,
in love with our emotions.
Yeah, I'm always telling people, save it for the stage. The drama, we expend a lot of energy in dramatic feeling ways that I think are actually it's habituation. And it's also I think culturally, again, I don't think this is just an acting phenomenon. I think this is a human phenomenon. I think we're addicted to oftentimes bad feeling. Not that there's anything good or bad about any kind of feeling, but when I mean bad feeling, I mean we're addicted to feeling not good, or we're addicted to spinning and telling stories that, reinforce either our victimization or rationalizing something, or, things that support really who we really aren't. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the awareness is, are you willing to sort of let that story go to feel better?
Right.
And that's all it is. It's just stories. It's really so interesting. You guys were talking about sort of in the introduction there about, it's really about choices. And just to get on the phone with you guys this morning, there was a little bit of a cough up, and I realized it was a little bit stressful. And I was like, well, no, it's not stressful. It's also, if you choose to see it in a different way, it's kind of an adventure, because when is life not going to be giving you curveballs? And I think if you can sort of change your paradigm of that, it's not personal. The world isn't out to get you. There's not some, there's not a good or bad force in the sky throwing, dodgeballs at you, moo-ha-ha, making your life really difficult. I think you begin to enjoy, oh, well, this is challenging and can be fun. I don't think challenges have to necessarily be so, like you said, dramatic.
Well, and even the word dramatic. So there's something in dramatic that, in my experience, so this is both in my personal life and in my acting, because I was an actor for many years.
Mm-hmm.
Really good acting isn't dramatic. There's subtlety and there's complexity, and there's something in it that's more substantial. I think of again, running these dramas. We tend to, there's an addictive quality in the dramas and in the patterns of emotion that we get hooked into. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And it lacks depth. I mean, one of the things I say often about acting is and this is true of my life, is I care that it's honest. You know?
Yeah.
I don't really like performing. I mean, personally, I have my patterns where I find myself performing, and that's not how I want to show up in the world. And that was true both as an actor and as a person. I really have great reverence for honesty.
Yeah, and I think, something I just thought of, when we're talking about drama, like I often say, like, conflict is okay, and then drama is sort of our story about conflict.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me about conflict is often born out of truth, is about being honest and about seeking honesty and about finding safety and being, honestly expressed. And then I feel like oftentimes we then blow that into, the dramatic interpretation of something, because it's scary to actually just really be honest with feelings, even if that comes up in an uncomfortable, conflicted way. So, it's so, I think we're really kind of in a risk-averse culture, and I think there's been, like, research that shows, like, especially with technology, i.e. phones, like, we really can find so many ways now to disengage from what we're feeling. And so much of the work that I'm doing with people is, you can't keep anesthetizing yourself from feeling, because it has to go somewhere. It does go somewhere. You know what I mean? There's only so many times you can look at your phone, and so many times you can, tweet something or check your Facebook status when you're upset about something or when you're feeling something, but choose to do that to check out. And so how do you instead breathe into what you're feeling? And then you also begin to realize, like, it's actually not that big of a deal. Feeling isn't really that big of a deal. It's just our thoughts about our feeling that create, again, the drama about it.
Yes, we're terrified of it. We've been conditioned to be terrified of it. And now, as you said before, it is in many ways easier to imagine the quote-unquote bad, the constrictive feelings, the more difficult feelings, than it is to imagine what is juicy and wild and wonderful and new, because we're so trained that way. But I just want to posit something and then get your response to it. I have a feeling it's going to open a whole nother dialogue. I've realized some time ago that the training that actors go through is exactly the kind of training that not just that seekers go through in order to become finders in life. They begin to discover the mechanics of personality creation, of performance creation. They begin to understand, they create characters out of building subtexts, which is another language for a model of the subconscious, the drives that inform a character that in the moment the character usually is not aware of, but an audience, if it's well done, an audience is aware of. And so actors are trained to look at the text and to build backstories and to take objectives and intentions and play to them. And yet it's astonishing that we don't have as our shamans and avatars, that we don't have ranks and ranks and ranks of actors out in front leading us all towards who and what we can be, because they possess all that knowledge. Rarely have I seen an actor, and this is not just about actors, it's people in general, but actors have all the tools. So it's to actually close the loop from what they have learned about creating character and performance, close the loop and turn it back on themselves and say, have I done the same sort of thing with my life? And am I more than the personality, than the performance that I am living? And who is that? Who is the me that is creating the small, the lowercase m me? Mm-hmm. We have to take a break, and when we come back, after we sell some bread, some orange juice, some insurance, some cars.
Always sell cars.
We always sell cars.
Okay.
We'd love you to weigh in on that. I know you have a lot to say about that right here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain and our guest, Anthony Meindl. Before the break, we were talking, or Barnett was talking, a bit about acting as sort of, almost a mystery school, a way of accessing a deeper perspective and understanding of the nuances underneath the human condition. So, Anthony, I'm thinking you may have some thoughts about this. You want to weigh in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, I should be taking acting class with you both. I mean, you're...
You have to apply.
Okay. I mean, I'm learning a lot. You guys roll deep. I mean, that was such a thought-provoking, conversation that you started there. Here's what I think. A couple things. Yes, of course. I think, actors are in many ways the original shamans. If we go back to ancient Greece, like that's what actors originally felt, that they were vessels or channels telling divine stories. And I think, somewhere along the line, maybe we've lost, I think really good actors understand that sort of connection to source, but I think somewhere along in the dialogue, maybe people haven't, I think it's coming around, like you used the word looping back. I think now people are starting to kind of talk about sort of the spiritual quotient of acting. But I think maybe part of the reason why we've lost some of what it's really about is because we're more celebrity obsessed. And so we confuse the image and how we so consume like the media portrayal of what success looks like or acting looks like or glamour or, you know what I mean? I think we get stuck on the picture as opposed to going deeper into, well, what's the story behind that?
Yeah. And
so
go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to say, I think for me, especially my philosophy about how we work here is I work so less about the cerebral concepts of like some of those things that you were talking about, like objective and through line and backstory and stuff like that. Not to say that those things may not assist the actor in opening up their imagination, but what I really am helping actors understand, like Tilda Swinton talks about, all acting is autobiography. And I find that, to me, shamans are people who are really pulling from their own life to share with other people, to reveal back to humanity what it means to be human. And so that's what acting is. That's all it is. So you go and see a really superlative performance or a really great movie, and it touches chords within you and your own connection to your own personal history, but your own connection to the divine.
Yeah, that's it. That's that piece is what's really important. Is the
But I think having sorry, boys. I just think I'm really passionate about it because I do think that needs to be the conversation, and I actually think I think this work has become so popular that I'm doing with actors because I think we're living in a time now where there's this amazing confluence of information about spirit and science and. Everybody's, from Oprah to, I read Tom Brady was talking about meditation the other day. I mean, he's, a football icon. So to really hear a lot of these principles being shared in a more layperson's way for the general audience, I find to be so exciting because it's no longer on the margins of society.
So there's a few conversations going on here, and I want to loop back a little bit. The idea that the craft of acting, the art of it, the shaman element is almost distorted because of the fame and the mass projection onto the celebrity and the superstar. Yeah. But I want to go back more to the craft because from my perspective, again, good acting is not one-dimensional. It's layering in, right? It's mixed feelings and layers of complexity. And the actor's ability to hold that and to express it in a way where, we see ourselves reflected. I'm thinking right now there's so many great television programs. I think we're going to look back on this moment as the golden age of television, basically because of the cable networks. I'm hooked on Breaking Bad, for example,
right.
Where here's a character that one-dimensionally surface, you'd say, oh, bad guy. But then you're hooked into it, or Dexter even, where the bad guy has complexity and layers, and the world isn't black and white and good and bad. And there's this relief in that, right? So we can even see our own shadow in a way that allows us to have compassion for the shadow and so forth. So there's something really beautiful going on, at least in my experience, or that's always the magic from my perspective, of what really honest, good acting, layered acting, where someone can hold that kind of complexity and I can relate to them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that's so well said. I think it's really about, it is the light and the dark, right? And that you can't really find the prisons of light except through the dark. And so I think, again, really great performance or really great art is really a reflection also of those dark parts within ourselves that, again, I think when we see them sort of explored in a really full human way, then you begin to be less judgmental about those parts within yourself.
That's it.
So again, I think it's, a lot of what I help actors understand is actually the things that we condemn within ourselves the most, that we judge and we hate and we are fearful of the most within ourselves, actually holds the greatest potential for us, not only as, an artist, but as a person. But it requires us to forge through that stuff to get to the other side. And the only way you're going to do that is by confronting it. So, and then you begin to realize, oh, I have an inner, like I'm always saying, we have the most divine to the most devilish, the most miserly to the most giving, the most compassionate to the most, judgmental. We have all these polarities within us. And I think once you begin to acknowledge and embrace them, you stop projecting them onto other people. It's so much easier in our culture to be like, oh, he's an ass and she's a bitch. And, I don't know if I can cuss on your show, but anyway,
You can't.
Okay.
but you're all right. You said words that we can go with.
Okay, good. I was going to go darker, but anyway, once you begin to realize, everybody is but a projection of our own stuff, then you begin to, well, where is that part lie in me? Where am I being an ass? Where am I being miserly? Where am I being, unforgiving?
Yeah.
So, it's complex and yet it's really beautiful and cathartic and I find that it's the work that I'm doing really has less to do with acting and it has more to do with just life. So, like the book that you were talking about, it just came out last year, but I think a lot of people who aren't actors have really been getting the book and will tweet me or email me and are like, oh my gosh, it's really been really helpful to, read what I'm talking about and do some of the exercises, that it's not just geared for actors. I also think, but I was saying in class last night, I think everybody should take an acting class. I think, or be an actor for the day, because I think it's one of the hardest things ever, because actors are putting themselves out there and being forced to be vulnerable in ways that most human beings can skirt around on a daily basis.
It's also an accelerated path through about 5 years of therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to get up close and intimate with your issues? Take an acting class.
Well, I used to say often that when I was acting, it felt more real than my real life. I mean, specifically in the studio setting, like in the classes and on set, not as much, right? But in that, I felt like I was working my stuff out in a way that I felt very alive, and I would leave acting class vibrating. Because I was so in my experience, whereas most of my life I was numbing out, or I was going in my head. So acting became this incredible outlet for a kind of realness,
kind of a place where you could tap into what is more real and true of yourself, and feel it embodied. Well, we cannot do an improv here unless you want to come in studio, but. We can do maybe we'll do that the next time. We'll do we'll do the kissing cousin to an improv. If I say something to you, I want you to respond with whatever comes up from you. So we're going to move from spectator to spect-actor.
Okay.
What does that mean to you?
A spectator to a spect.
Move from spectators to spect-actors.
I'm not sure, but I think, the thing, you'll have to tell me. But
you don't get to say I'm not sure. This is an improv. Yes, and?
I mean, okay, yes, and I think for me, a lot of what I'm trying to encourage people to do is stop being a spectator, on the sidelines of your own life. And so I think once you stop observing other people and get in and just do it yourself, you start to have an enriched, enlivened spiritual experience in your own work and life. So
that's great. You get to come back next week.
Oh, okay.
Barnett, you got it right.
Okay,
That's actually a bit of an oxymoron. The getting it right is all about not trying to get it right. I mean, this is the great paradox of acting. Is that we talked about this recently. That when my greatest advice to actors about auditioning is don't audition. Is that the minute you find yourself auditioning, you're lost, and you actually have to. Make a choice and go for it. And there's no wrong choice other than trying to get it right. That's the
totally
wrong
right.
choice, right?
Yep. No, I talk about that.
And how true is that about life?
It is totally true about life.
It's all, you see, that's what I mean. To me, acting is just an extension of one's life anyway. So, all these things we're talking about, the ramifications really show up in one's life. But
and one of the greatest life advices was what my acting coach used to always say to me, Freeman, get out of your head. It's to this day the best advice possible. Get out of your head, man. It's not a head trip. Get in your gut. Get in your heart. Come from your groins. That I can believe.
Is groins plural?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I call it,
'Cause I'm in trouble if it's plural.
I call it, oh my God, now I'm forgetting what I call it.
Just call it.
Call it something different. Whatever you called it before, don't call it again. Call it something new. Totally organic.
Lose your mind and gain your senses is one way of saying it. And then I also talk about, I often use this term called the drop. I try to get actors to get in a drop. And when they're dropped, it means they're moving from sort of their head space into what you just said, their solar plexus and their heart and their groin, which is really where acting and feeling comes from. So it's really moving from even a human experience into a divine experience.
I love that. And another great acting phrase, which my acting teacher used to say, he'd say, get curious. Can you get curious about it? Again, same thing in life is we're so quick to judge something as good or bad. And it's such good advice to say, well, can you get curious about it? Can you engage with it? And it's okay if it scares you. It's okay if it gets you. I mean, let those things come up and make them part of the experience, which as an actor is, again, what creates the dimension, the complexity, and makes it so intriguing. What great advice for life.
Yeah, that's totally it. It really is about allowing, It's really about, allowing what's right in front of you to unfold, whether that's, a reaction or intuition or an instinct or feeling, and then acting on it. I mean, that's really it. I think, though, that it's, again, I think acting for so long has been taught that it's, the art of doing, and I totally disagree. It's not the art of doing because we're not human doings, we're human beings. So I think what I teach is first we have to learn how to be. We have to learn how to be with ourselves, with feelings that come up, and then how to engage and be with other people and when their feelings come up. Because, like we've talked about at the top of the show, is feelings can be scary, it can be totally overwhelming. And if we're not given the skills of how to feel in life, then you're in an acting scene or you're at an audition or you're on a film set, well, it's going to be like system override. You're not quite sure how to deal with all the stuff that's coming up. So, it's really interesting to work with people in this way. And I'm not a trained therapist, and yet most everybody who
just play one on television.
That's right.
In our final moments, we would love you to share with our listeners where they can learn more about your work and what you're up to, and where we can follow you, and where we can sit in on your class, tweet you, and all of that stuff. And I, for one, am coming down to your class.
Oh no, that's what I was gonna say. I would love to have you guys come sit in. I would love to meet you in person, and you guys are you're so on point. But yeah, I think you'd have such a great time. And
we're in.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
We're there. You have refreshments?
Yeah. We will provide the latest cookies on the break.
Fantastic. We're there.
All right. So where can our audience find you?
Yes, they can find me. I mean, it depends on where you are. You can find me at www.anthonymeindl, MEINDL.com. It's all one word. Or on Twitter, and my handle is @AnthonyMeindl. So you can find me there. And then also I have a studio studio here in LA. That's where I'm based, but also a school in New York, a school in London, a school in Vancouver, and we're about to open a school in Sydney. It's really exciting that this work is sort of like, I don't know, it's just really amazing how it's just expanding outward in such a magnificent way.
Well, and I want to echo what you said earlier. Everyone should take an acting class to find themselves. Right?
I mean, I have people...
And there is no excuse, folks, because Anthony is all over the world.
He's all over the world. And Barnett and I are going to be there. So
we're going to be there.
Double down. Yeah, all right, we got to take a break.
We know where you are.
So listen, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you
guys,
listening...
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it was awesome. Those of you listening, stay tuned, because we'll be right back after these messages to wrap this up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain. We're going back to acting class, Barnett.
Yeah, that's going to be great. That's going to be fun. God, I love acting class.
I love acting class. It's just a thrill. And again...
My biggest problem with acting class is it's when I have to run lines. I can't remember anything.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody remembers anything.
Yeah, that's just a trick. You get good at learning lines.
You've been telling me that for years. You remember that thing where we worked up that story for the moth, and it took me it was 3 minutes.
I showed you the technique.
Yeah, but the technique didn't work.
It does work.
Yeah, right.
All right, so we'll get Barnett here.
We'll argue about this off line.
Really. All right, I want to talk about this. So everyone should take an acting class, and it's about having, for me, a couple things. There's a permission. Again, when I said, playing the character, I felt more real than in my real life, there was a permission to have feelings and to, one of the things about acting class is there's this expanding of capacity. We've talked about this a number of times. And so that's another piece, is where I expand my capacity to have mixed feelings too. Because again, it's not one dimensional. It's not like pick a feeling and go with it. It's like mixed feelings from an acting perspective is great. It allows for complexity and fluidity and spontaneity. And then the other part, which you and I have talked about, is the connection part, right? So really good actors listen really well. They connect in a particular way, which again, in life, if we're listening to other people, we're responding, and we're, allowing the complexity to be part of the experience, there's a realness that I feel livens life up. I don't know if that's even English, but it
enlivens.
Enlivens. It enlivens. Yeah. So maybe it is English. Okay.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. Actors make a practice of exploring what lies between. That's where the power is. What lies between. What goes unsaid between the words, the underlying energies and frequencies, whether actors come to it through a process that's mental or however, or they look to their history or their personal lives. Eventually, for them to be really excellent, they have to drop that into their bodies in a felt sense. But they are always exploring what is between the words, between what is indicated, and then this magic happens. And so they become masters of what in the culture we always hear things about reading between the lines, and what that's referring to are these explorations that actors make a practice of becoming masters of.
I love that.
Whatever that means.
The other thing, so I played a bad guy in a couple different of my iterations.
Was Drake Belson a bad guy?
Drake Belson was a redeemable bad guy, but he was a bad guy.
He was a bad guy.
So the key to playing
a
bad guy, again, words from my acting coach, is he says, he used to always say, the bad guy doesn't...
They always have to have a good reason at the bottom. The best bad guy
doesn't know he's a bad guy. The best bad guy
thinks he's got a high principle.
Totally. So that was my acting teacher's advice. He says, Freeman, the bad guy doesn't know he's a bad guy. So you're never playing the bad guy. You're playing objectives and you're playing whatever. And there's a humanity to it that makes the bad guy, relatable, and then the storyline has complexity. It isn't good and bad, and when the good guy's not a good guy sometimes, and the people, again, even the whole bad guy, doing away with good and bad, just watching these human dramas play out with their complexity is so powerful. That's why I'm saying it's kind of a golden age of television, because the writing of these shows and the acting of them. I'm thinking of Dexter and Breaking Bad and all kinds of shows that are out right now, Game of Thrones, and just an amazing array of just really great material.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And of course, your material, Milton's Secret, coming up, folks, and all kinds of other projects you're working on. I've read a lot of the scripts, and I love it. It's nuanced and it's interesting, and you have mixed feelings the whole way through. And
I am so excited about Milton's Secret.
You have to send me the latest draft. I haven't read it.
Oh, I'll send it to you, and we'll, for any of our listeners, as of the 24th of September.
That's right.
24th of September, there is a Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign to fill in some of the gaps in our funding requirements, but some of the little missing pieces. That's Indiegogo 924. Well, at least check it out, because there is some wonderful footage up there. Really wonderful footage of some of the players involved, like Artful talking about the script in the movie, and it's pretty beautiful, I think.
I love your pieces in that, what you had to say about.
It was fun to make that.
Yeah,
really fun to make that.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be fun to make the movie.
It's gonna be great fun to make
for all these reasons. That again, it's the complexity. I mean, that's the beauty of this script, is that. It's such a reflection of the times, but not in a way that it tells you what to think about it. It's an exploration of a young boy's experience, and he's really
getting out of his head.
Well, and this is the fascinating part from my perspective. Again, having read the script, not the current script, so maybe I'm wrong, but from the firmer iteration that I did read. It's almost like, so what it confronts, and I don't want to give too much away, or maybe I can, you can call me off if I'm giving too much away, is this is a kid who is facing the stresses of the collective experience. So parents are dealing with money crisis, the community's dealing with its crises, and all these things, and the coping mechanisms, right, of all the adults. The heart of it is this kid's experience. That's where we as an audience get to really experience it. And the wisdom teacher, who is the grandfather, comes in a way not to tell the boy what to do, but to reflect back his own knowing. That piece is really so beautiful, right? Because it's not about telling him, here's how to fix it, kid. It's about really allowing him the dignity of his own wisdom to find his way through it. And that's such a beautiful thing. And again, the wisdom of the kid is so compared to the reactions of the parents. Like, the kid is really in the humanity of the struggle. That's my experience of the script.
Yeah, very much so. And to the point of our discussion today, it really is a story that models what it is that great actors learn, how to not become too attached to the events, to the so-called facts.
Right.
And to push away of the feelings that come up around there, but to feel the feelings, and then not to become too attached to the feelings, not to believe every thought that runs through your head, nor to take action on every feeling, allow that to also run through, and to be more present with the aliveness in your body. There's a confusion that for many, many, many years, up until very recently, I myself did not understand that there was a distinction between emotions and feelings. And so when we talk about emotions, we're really referring to what actors refer to as well, which are the experiences that of energy that move through us, energy motion that move through us, that are connected up to our thoughts. I have a thought about mowing the lawn and fresh cut grass, and it creates a feeling of warmth and comfort and magical summers in me, and I can have a feeling of being chased by a rabid dog. That thought, and it brings up different feelings, different emotions. But that's not the same as feelings, and feelings has to do with a sense of chi. That is aliveness that is in your body, that is a sensation. And it's not so. We have to be trained to develop an awareness that is even there. You know, it's like growing up in New York and hearing traffic all the time. You have to be trained to notice the garbage trucks and the honking of the horns. You just take it for granted as the way life is. And that's a lot of what happens in this movie.
This is just a thought that came to mind, and I don't know if it's exactly what you're talking about. My sense is emotion is often held in the context of history.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling, and I think we've talked about this on the show, is that it tends to be very dynamic. And so one of my pieces is to allow feeling to come up without attaching it to a thought or a story, just allowing it to flow through me. And again, in the acting experience, there's so much feeling in the room. And an actor may be aware of subtext, though you can't be that aware of it. I mean, it's something where you can, you can rehearse and so forth and so on. There's a natural ability to hold all that, which I don't know if you can diagram, in a script analysis, context. But that one goes through the experience of learning to analyze the script to know that there is complexity is perfect. But then you let it all go. So the only point I was trying to make, I don't even know if I was making a point, but just that sometimes emotion is linked a lot to the stories that have held the feelings, that we framed these feelings in a particular way, versus the feelings just being lots of feeling without having to tie it to a story or any kind of context, which just allow feeling to be part of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to me to be a kind of presence where all feeling can be bouncing in and out and around.
And then it moves through. Now we're not clinging to it.
Right.
And then we're not hanging on to it.
Framing and explaining it, justifying it, whatever.
Yeah. There's that old expression about you never forget, one never forgets where they bury the hatchet. So in the same way, we cling to certain sets of feeling, certain sets of emotions, because they support thinking, a relationship of thinking and feeling. And I don't necessarily want to let go of some of the things in my life that I remember from the past that gave me great joy. And likewise, I don't necessarily want to let go. I tell myself I do, but really underneath, there's a part of me that is uncomfortable with letting go of certain unpleasant, restrictive energies that are associated with negative experiences of being controlled or being deprived of love, or I don't want to let that go necessarily, because then I would lose. I tell myself the story that I'd lose the ability to make it right, or I'm banking that sense of righteousness, or it becomes a part of my identity, and so on the surface, we think, well, no, I would really like to get rid of a lot of those things, but they're tied into such a web of complexity, and there's so many different emotions that are
we
woven.
become identified with them. They're the stories of our lives that we've vested in.
It would very much change the nature of who we are, and it's shocking to swift and sudden change of any kind, whether it's wonderful, a windfall, or whether it's debilitating, or any swift and sudden change is so shocking to the system that it precipitates a chaos. So we're loath to let those things go. But as actors, it's really great training to slap on the little training wheels on the side of my two-wheeler and trot out a set of experiences that are somebody else's life that I get to step into, and maybe it better enables me to deal with my own challenges.
It's interesting because the part of this show that I really enjoy, this experience, I should say, is the improv aspect, where it bends and weaves and turns, and I love that. And that's again one of those pieces about acting, is that one of my favorite shows, I did a pilot that was partially scripted. Bunim Murray, the folks who created The Real World, were the producers of the pilot, and it was so much fun. So there's certain things we had to say, but the rest would just sort of come up organically. And the storylines were so interesting, how they bend and weave, and the writers were always kind of rewriting as they were going, and like, oh, that's good. Let's go that direction. It was such a fun project. It didn't ultimately go, yeah, and that's a whole different story. But the point is, having done that, I love that, the spontaneity of what could come next, you know. And so many of us are tied to storylines that are over-scripted. Like, you know, they're over-rehearsed. Even stories about our feelings are over-rehearsed. If we were able to really just follow a thread, I mean, this is my own aspiration, is to just follow a thread and let it play out. Who knows? Another one of my great teachers, Gene Bua, used to always say, anything can happen and it's never what you think it can. It never think it's going to be. And if you can be in that moment of discovery, you know, and just let everything play out and go wherever it's going to go, it's a really magical experience.
That's the humility conversation we were talking about last time, that things happen the same way again and again and again. But if we are really in the humility of something, and it is the understanding that in the very next instant, it can all be different. With that, I think it can all be different for now, because we only have
30 seconds.
30. Well, that's an eternity.
You
So
love to
I
say
want to
that's
just,
an
I love
eternity.
that. I do love that. It's I'm drunk with time. Speaking to the humility issue, humility and miracles, you know, the more humble we are in that sense, the more open we are to a wilder, juicier imagination that can imagine possibilities beyond the way we've held it. And to that point, for so many years, North Africa, East Africa has been an arid, parched place, and in a terrible crisis of famine and lack of water, and people making dire predictions of what would happen. And then I just read, like a couple of days ago or today, that they found an aquifer.
Like a huge lake underground.
Huge lake
but
underground. It's
huge.
the size of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Which could be an entire, well, not could be, will be an entire game changer for the continent.
I love
so
it. I love the game changers.
In
the
the
next
humility,
moment.
in the next moment, that which was a desert, and in terms of protracting the straight line, was predicted to be a disaster, and ever increasing levels of disaster. It's all going to be different now.
And with that, we hold that possibility. We adore the fact that in the next moment it could all be different. But in this moment,
We'll
we have
see
to say
you. We'll
goodbye.
see you the next moment, next time. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.